All right, hello and welcome. Today we are diving deep into TKT Module 1, Unit 17. We're going to look at all those practice activities that are just so crucial for taking what your students know about a language and turning it into something they can actually do. And don't you worry, everything we talk about today is coming straight from the core concepts of the TKT syllabus. The whole point here is to get you feeling super confident and totally ready for that exam. You know, this is the big one, isn't it? It's the question every single language teacher asks themselves. How do we bridge that gap? Well, the answer is all about using effective, well-designed practice. So let's explore how we build that bridge, step by step. So here's our roadmap. We're going to follow the entire journey a learner takes, starting with that super controlled, get it right kind of work, and moving all the way up to them speaking freely and with real confidence. First things first, before we get into the how, we really need to understand the why. Why do we even do these activities in our classrooms? What's the point? The thing is, practice is so much more than just, repetition. It's the spark that actually activates new language. It's the path that carries students from carefully focusing on accuracy over to being fluent. And maybe most important of all, it's what builds the confidence they need to even try to communicate in the first place. Okay, so that journey we talked about, it always starts with a really solid foundation. This is the stage where the teacher is right there, providing a ton of support. And the main goal is simple: get the language form correct. Think of controlled practice like you're building with Legos, but you have a very clear set of instructions. The students are working with one specific structure in a really predictable way. This helps minimize mistakes and just builds a super strong base. And this is where you see things like drills, simple gap fills, or matching exercises. They are all designed to build that kind of language muscle memory, whether it's for grammar or vocab. And because there's a high chance of success, it does wonders for their confidence. Now, once that foundation feels pretty solid, we can move on. This is the stage where we start to kind of take the training wheels off a little bit and push our students towards more realistic communication. You see, the big shift here is all about control. We're starting to hand over some of that control to the learners. The task is still structured, for sure, but now they have to start making some real choices about the language they use to get it done. A perfect example of this is an information gap activity. Where one student has information the other one needs, they have to communicate to solve the puzzle. Suddenly the outcome isn't totally predictable, and they're using language for a real reason, not just to repeat something for the teacher. And here we are. We've reached the destination. This is the whole point of what we do, right? Getting our students to a place where they can communicate their own ideas, freely and with confidence. This is where your students get to pull from everything they know. All the grammar, all the vocabulary, it's all fair game. The focus isn't on getting one tiny grammar point right anymore. It's about successfully getting your message across, just like in real life. And this is where you see it all come together. Things like classroom debates, group problem-solving tasks, or just telling a personal story. This is when students can really express who they are. It's real, genuine communication. Now this table, this sums up the whole journey perfectly. Just look at how the learner's freedom goes from low to medium to high. At the same time, the main goal shifts from just accuracy all the way over to fluency. And notice how the teacher's role changes too. You go from being a conductor, leading every single note, to a supporter, and finally to a facilitator who just sets the stage and lets the students shine. So you might be thinking, okay, this makes sense, but how does this pathway look in my actual day-to-day lessons? How does it apply to different language systems and skills? Well, you can apply this logic to pretty much any language point. For grammar, you might start with a controlled sentence transformation activity. And for teaching a function like apologizing, you could end with a much freer role play where students have to apologize for being late to a meeting using their own words. And it's the exact same idea for skills. You could have students do a controlled listening activity where they listen for specific details. That's a receptive skill. And then you could follow that up with a freer speaking activity, like a class discussion about what they just heard. But here's something really important to remember. No matter if an activity is controlled, guided, or free, the best ones all share these key features. They have to have a clear goal, be at the right level for your students, and ultimately, they should always be pushing students toward using the language independently in a way that feels real. Okay, time to bring it all home. Let's really focus in on what you need to know to spot these concepts on the TKT exam and absolutely nail those questions.
This is it. This is your number one question. When you see a task on the exam, the very first thing you should ask yourself is the main point here to get the language form right, or is it to communicate a message? Your answer will tell you if it's controlled or freer.
The TKT will definitely ask you to connect the dots. You need to be able to see an activity, like a role play, and know that its main purpose is probably to practice a function. Or see a matching task and identify it as vocabulary practice.
And finally, never forget this basic but crucial difference. Is the student taking language in, like reading or listening? That's receptive. Or are they producing language out, like speaking or writing? That's productive. Knowing this is the key to so many questions on the test. So look, the big takeaway here isn't just to memorize these terms for an exam. It's about using this framework in your own teaching. When you start to consciously design that pathway from controlled accuracy to communicative fluency in your lessons, well, not only does your teaching become way more effective, but you'll also be mastering the very concepts you need to succeed on the TKT.